Welcome to Output 19 from Schafhof, European Center of Art in Freising in Upper Bavaria. I'm happy to have here Ariel Caine again, our second talk connected to the exhibition from forensic architecture. And I'm happy that this time Alexis Dworsky can be here with us. So he is artist and was co-curator for this exhibition at Schafhof. Schafhof is an institution of the Bezirk Oberbayern, the district council of Upper Bavaria. And we have artist residency program and an exhibition program. And we are very happy that we still have on display the exhibition by forensic architecture, even if it's in the moment you cannot visit as a public, but it's still there. And we are here to talk about, and I'm really curious and I'm really happy that we can continue our talk from before with Björn Fedder. So our new talking partner here, Alexis, hello. And yeah, so let's start.
So hi there, Eike, of course, Ariel, it's great to talk to you. It's great that you talk to us for a second time. So maybe most of the people who have already watched the first conversation, the first artist talk, know you, but I hope that there are also new visitors online now. So could you very briefly introduce yourself? Who are you? And what is forensic architecture?
Yeah, hi Alexis. Thank you very much for to continue this conversation. So my name is Ariel Caine. I'm a researcher, artist, originally from Israel now in London. Part of this group called Forensic Architecture. We're a university-based research agency based in London, Goldsmiths University, and we conduct spatial human rights investigation, looking at different environmental rights, the use of media, and different architectural techniques to extract from those spaces and media evidence for the violations of human rights, and on behalf of civic society and different civic groups.
So at Schafhof, European Center for Art Upper Bavaria, in the exhibition there is shown one single project of forensic architecture.
Yeah.
However, there are many, really many, so many more projects you have done. Maybe you could, just name a few of these projects, because I think there is a common approach, a general approach in all these projects that shows us how forensic architecture works.
Yeah, as you say, we're showing in Schafhof this one exhibition this one project rather, that we will go into in detail in a few minutes, but we've been kind of in existence for almost 10 years now, roughly, and have been kind of working across the globe, originally in Palestine, South America, the Middle East, Europe. One case that we did in Germany specifically was into the NSU. It was centered around a case of a murder of a man called Halit Yozgat in Kassel, and basically there was I actually forgot in the investigation of this murder, we were looking into the involvement of the German secret police and their kind of presence or knowledge of or masking of kind of their connections to right-wing groups who were kind of assassinating different immigrants, Germans of immigrant origins.
So this project about the NSU murder was shown at Documenta in Kassel also.
Yeah.
And so we are really happy that now another project of you is shown at the current exhibition at Schafhof. And the project at Schafhof, it is about the destruction of Yazidi cultural heritage. Des Kulturerbes der Jesiden. So Ariel, can you tell us about this special project? What is it about?
I mean, in 2014, ISIS moved into this region of Iraq, into the north of Iraq, and started a campaign of genocide against this ethnic religious group of the Yazidi. That this area is their kind of the heartland of their presence. They were considered as idolaters by ISIS, so devil worshippers and etc. And similar maybe to other types of persecution that ISIS carried out on other religious and minority groups. In the region, the Yazidis were targeted, and ISIS started this project of annihilation that was, on the one hand, focused on killing the people themselves, but also destroying their villages. And in relation to this project, we were focused on the involvement or the place of architecture and religious architecture as part of this process of genocide and erasure of the Yazidi presence. So the process itself and the project itself took us began as we were approached by a group of Yazidis, of a Yazidi-based NGO called Yazda. And they approached us to help them in their process of documentation that began kind of right as the genocide began. So they started working already in 2014 as ISIS was moving in, but about 2 years later they approached us, trying to figure out ways to document the kill sites, the destroyed temples, tracking the genocide, while on the ground it was very difficult to get access because ISIS was still there. In many areas, the Iraqi government or there was a lot of kind of different factions that were still fighting in that area. So there was a difficulty in documenting the place, and none of the organizations that are usually in charge of documenting things like this, like the UN, different national or international teams, none of them could access the place. It was only people from inside the country who were kind of barely able to access. And they were looking for help from the outside in methods of documenting these terrains in a way that could then be examined off-site, whether it's in Iraq itself or outside of Iraq. So, and they saw in some of our projects where architectural simulation, reenactment, testimony that is conducted through the process of architectural reconstruction, which is something that we use in different projects, including to a degree in the NSU project that I mentioned before, where it was a lot of rebuilding a space and kind of running through scenarios, reconstructing video scenarios to kind of understand the testimony through its spatial unfolding. So what Yazda was looking for, you wanted to...
No, just continue.
So what they were looking for was, there was a need, all these grave sites, I mean mass graves and sites of ruin, sites of kidnaps, torture, all indoctrination, religious indoctrination and training of young kids that were kind of kidnapped by ISIS and kind of converted. All of these spaces were there being kind of, and the evidence was fading away because no one could actually go and extract, record that evidence to be then looked at again in national courts or in international courts. And therefore there was a need to document it in a way that could then be looked at the level of the site, but also at the level of the genocide. So understanding the system of violence.
When you're talking about documentation, one might think about taking some photos and making measurements. However, the work of forensic architecture is characterized by using new technologies, I think.
Yeah.
And also here in this project in northern Iraq, in the Sinjar region, you were using new technologies, new digital methods. And here especially, there was used a method called photogrammetry. Can you explain what that means and how does it work?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a very big part of this project was sense of photogrammetry. The photogrammetry is basically the process of taking multiple photographs of a single site from multiple angles. So, different views around the object or around the site. It could be a single remain or an entire temple or an entire village even. And from those different angles, through process of computation, you get the three-dimensionality of the object. So each image contributes an aspect of that object, and together through measuring distances, computationally measuring distances between the cameras to the object and between the cameras to themselves, you get this 3D scanning of the site. And so with very, very basic cameras, so I mean, with your cell phone or with a very kind of, you don't need any professional equipment to take the photographs. But if you just follow a certain choreography of movement around the object, around the site, you can get an extremely high detailed record, snapshot, like a 3D snapshot of the space. And that 3D snapshot is a 3D image that is a representation, but it's also it has the measurements of the site. So it's a form of survey. So it's a form of a photographic survey. And in that way, I mean, this technique is used by archaeologists, by forensic scientists, in many different scenarios, and you now have it on your iPhone as well. I mean, the new iPhone, the new iPad has LiDAR as well, which is a laser scanning technology, but definitely, I mean, 3-4 years ago, I mean, it was a bit less. I mean, the LiDAR was not there, but the idea that people on the ground could document through very simple means, and then if we show them different processes of computation, they can reconstruct a measurable copy of the site that obviously doesn't have everything, but it could then, we could measure all sorts of things like the type of ruin, the type of explosives that were used to detonate it, the type of, the size of the grave exactly, its geolocation, so where it is positioned in relation to other, geographical features or architectural features.
So from many, many photos, you can create a digital three-dimensional model of nearly any object. And
yes.
here it was the temples and the shrines of the Yazidi culture that were already destroyed when you came there.
Yes. Yeah. So we began with we decided to start this kind of project, this first side of the project. I mean, it had actually two sides. There was the documentation that was happening in Sinjar, but before that, there was a whole stage of training. So we actually we formulated the project with Yazda's documentation team. So they have a team in Duhok in Iraq. With them, we decided what are the sites that we can access, what is the system that we want to, that they basically want to document, and how this fits into their process of testimony collection, and how spatializing this documentation that they're doing can help and actually tie the thing together. I mean, going back to the question around technology, it's not just a matter of using photogrammetry or different mapping software or different mapping techniques. It's a lot about, in forensic architecture in general, about bring different data sets and different forms of knowledge and different forms of data together in space and time, using space and time as a form of that kind of ties these things together. And basically one piece of media verifies the other. So you build a network of different forms of data that together produce the evidence or the narrative.
But I think it's not only bringing together different technologies and methods, but also bringing together different people.
Yeah. No, when I say knowledge, it's
very essential in your work.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us also a little bit about this collaboration with different people. How did you get into contact? How did you really work? What was the process of working?
Yeah, so I mean when I said forms of knowledge, I mean, I should specify that it's knowledge that is also tied to specific people and specific, so not only knowledge in terms of an engineer and an archaeologist and a historian, but also a religious person from an actual person who knows the ground by being there, by living there, so a lived knowledge of a specific place. It's basically what is termed hybrid forums. So forums that are kind of made out of many different people, many different disciplines, many different forms of knowledge, and that the hierarchies in the project are not, we're organizing the project and everyone is kind of just providing material for us. It's much more horizontal, and the projects are built around kind of building these kind of forums or coalitions so Yazda approached us to start with, and kind of we began talking to them about what actually we can contribute in this project. We also spoke to explosives experts. We spoke to historians, to people who are kind of more knowledgeable on the religious aspects of the Yazidi culture. There were different kind of preservationists, of course, architects and kind of journalists that are also, some of them in our team directly and some of outside. There are different centers in the US and in the UK that were tracking ISIS and kind of documenting the trail that ISIS left behind, to understand the kind of infrastructure that ISIS set up to move people around northern Iraq. So the kidnapped women, for instance, that they were taken from the Yazidi villages over 3,000 are still missing or kind of still under ISIS captivity. So, there were a lot of different forms of information and knowledge that we had to kind of bring together to learn about this.
One moment, I don't want to rush very much, but you have a limited time, and we spoke a lot about this kind of documentation and the political aspect of the work and so on last time. And one of the people who were involved are you as a photographer as well. So that's also the kind of certain knowledge. And Alexis, he was dealing very much with the setup of the exhibition and so on. And he's an artist by himself. And I remember he was really excited to think about the artistic perspective of the whole project, because of course we have the technology and of course we have this very important political and human perspective. But in the end, we have an exhibition in an art space, and it was for me as well exciting to see how to transform that or how to deal with that in an art context. So maybe if we can switch a little bit to this, it would be interesting for me, because I know Alexis taught a lot of exciting thoughts about that, and maybe you can connect with this as well to see, because this is also one dimension of the whole project. And when I understood, this is one what is also very much your part as well. Or maybe you can tell us something with this, who is dealing with the final form, how to present it, because this is when it becomes an art piece as well.
I mean, yeah, I mean, this project all of our projects in the end are displayed also in the context of art. I mean, as I think we also spoke about this a bit in the previous conversation, we don't produce, even though some of us, I mean, I myself am an artist, and there are other artists in the team, in the group, or in forensic architecture. There's the focus is always like the heart of the project is always the production of evidence, and the way that we narrate or we understand evidence is tied or is inseparable from the material form that we're dealing with. So, and being practitioners of that deal with aesthetic material, or with kind of the trying to understand what does it mean to work with photography, with kind of the visual form, how do we tell a story, or how do we kind of bring down this extremely complex and kind of, extremely complex kind of condition and story, and try to, bring it down to a narrative. We've very early kind of focused on the video as a narrative device to both interrogate kind of this kind of idea of the documentary, or the idea of kind of how do you use documentary film. I mean, learning from Harun Farocki, for instance, as one kind of example of kind of this almost visual essay type of use of video that kind of looks at a case, but also uses that case to look back at media, and how does, optical imaging, for instance, work in relation to what you want to record. And then here in this project, the biggest thing that we, in an artistic, let's say, sense, but also in a conceptual sense of what can photography do, and I wrote my PhD on this, on this spatialized form of photography, so on the three-dimensional form of photographic practice. The biggest thing that we knew that this project was kind of dealing with, and this is very much present also in the exhibition in Schafhof, was the idea of photography as a collaborative practice. So the idea that an image is not created, or evidence also, when you take it to a larger level, photography is not done through one person's perspective. So it's not a person taking an image through this perspectival machine, producing a flat representation, but it's this collective form of image making that creates, or that makes an environment through which you then need to start navigating. And so the biggest part of the project was not the actual documentation as far as forensic architecture's role was in it, because Yazidi was taking, and still is documenting on the ground. The biggest part of it was the training, for instance. So the training, the building of the methodology, how to make this combination of not just taking images or videos, but making spaces from those multiple images, and how do you tie that space to a mapping space and build a larger constellation, and then the need to navigate that space. So you enter into an image, you don't look at it from the outside.
We had the kind of process like this as well when we built up the exhibition, and that was, maybe Alexis can talk about this, because it was very exciting. Because we got a lot of data, images, video, and even 3D print data, and Alexis was the part who really made the exhibition out of it. Of course, connected to your images we got from you.
So usually, when you build up the exhibition of an artist or an art group, the artist comes, or at least the transport company comes, and brings you some original artworks. In this case, it was different. We got access to a online cloud and were told that we could, well, take the data and build up an exhibition. And that was really challenging at the first moment. But on the other hand, it was a great opportunity because we, of course, in communication with you and with forensic architecture, can decide what is where is the main interest and what's the most important thing. And one thing, really a focus of the exhibition is exactly what you were talking about, was this kind of collaboration. So there is a big picture, a big printed photo in the exhibition that shows a young man with a kite, with a and what I'm really fascinated was this bringing together high-tech and low-tech, bringing together people from different backgrounds, as you said. That's really important. And somehow the whole project, I think, is about digital preservation. It's about a conservation of things that could be seen at the moment and will disappear soon, and to make some kind of copy of the original world into the digital world. And at first I thought it's a completely new thing, but after talking with you, I got more and more to the opinion that it's a thing what artists already did a long time ago. They did plaster or bronze casting, and now you're using kites with cameras or drones, but to make also a copy of an existing object. So maybe you can tell us, what are the possibilities in the relation of contemporary art of these new methods, and what are the difficulties maybe?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole several discussions actually, but
can continue.
But there's a few kind of things. First of all, I mean, the way, like, first of all, bring it to speaking from the perspective of forensic architecture and the project. I mean, the way that we use models forensic architecture is under this kind of term that came up, which is the operative model. So maybe similar, actually not very similar actually, to the operative image, which is again a Faroqi term. But the model is a site of not just, again, representation or preservation, but a site for continued investigation. So I mean, the analysis or the project doesn't end in the model. So it's not that we do the project and then we end up with the final artwork, but rather that's where it starts almost, or it's a middle point, let's say, at least. So you do this kind of the training and the modeling, and then when you have the model, you actually start the investigation second phase, where you look into, you know, what can you actually read from the model? How do you simulate within the model? How do you put that in relation to other images and kind of situate the images through the virtual space? Or how do you create or take or kind of conduct testimony collection through the architectural space that you record? So I mean, there are different types of ways in which we use these 3D modeling techniques, which, as you say, can be in and of themselves an end result of combination of high and low technology. But a second thing, second aspect of this is tied to, which is actually tied to another partner in this whole project, which is not only kind of forensic architecture and Yazda, but actually the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, that with whom we started a kind of a collaboration long before.
But maybe I think we should tell the audience in Germany that the Victoria and Albert Museum, the V&A, is not a museum for contemporary art, but a museum, or even the biggest collection in the whole world, for design objects, for applied art and decorative objects. And that's, I think, is a very interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, we started our kind of collaboration with them originally for the Venice Biennale in 2016, or around this, what they termed as their project there was around they call it the cast courts of the 21st century. So in the Victoria and Albert Museum there is this area of the casts, because they would in their colonial past they would not it's a type of artifact collection that was not tied to pillaging, for instance, taking pieces of Palmyra, but actually creating replicas of them. So casting them and then bringing the casts, and even kind of making multiple casts, then traveled throughout kind of Europe, and they were thinking of what does it mean to have the cast courts of the digital age. So they had these kind of projects looking into 3D scanning and simulation, and we were looking into the actual different bomb clouds at the time. So thinking of the cloud as a kind of temporary sculpture to an extent, or temporary state or material condition, explosion blasts. But they kind of joined the project as kind of working to fund and kind of help with the curation of the project and kind of housing of the project. And they're really interested in this idea of how do you go back to different places, not ignoring their colonial and even British involvement in Iraq, but in Second World War and of course before that, but thinking as a museum how they can actually mobilize their knowledge and into kind of recording spaces and recording cultural heritage, and also recording technologies. So as you say, it's an applied art or applied kind of design material. So they're also interested in the methodologies of image production and sculpture production, or cultural heritage kind of recording. So they had two interests in this project. So both in the final product and also in the actual methodology that emerged out of it.
So in postmodern philosophies, there is a broad discussion about the original and the copy, about, let's say, reality and fake. So what is the difference between the original Yazidi temple or shrine and the digital reconstruction, the model of that shrine? Do we still need the original?
First of all, it's not whether we need it or not. I think it's actually not the question. It's we're not. No one really should. We shouldn't. Let's say me as an Israeli, I'm not even like part of the question, like whether I need to take or not take a Yazidi, shrine anywhere, and like so. The second thing is that these sites are more closely to the question of because there is a question of even not just even with photography, there's the ethical question of not just whether you take something or you leave it there, but also how do you take an image? Are you allowed to take an image? Are you allowed to show an image without permission, without the right context? Without the right kind of, there's a huge amount of ethical questions also into the digital copy, not just into the original kind of object or whatever. But in this case of the temples, for instance, some of them are, first of all, they're crime sites that you don't start taking the crime scene, and also when you document it, in this case, it was extremely important that people from the place who are doing the documentation, and they know how and when and to whom to kind of how to circulate it and how to word things and how to kind of where to approach some of these places. At least one of the temples that was and still is, as far as I know, this open question, people being detonated inside the temple before it, so people being put into the temple before it was blown up. So it's not just a site of ruin, but it's also a mass grave in a way. So I mean, there are all these extremely difficult questions about how you document it and how you circulate it. And this is also one of the reasons why we didn't actually start displaying the mass graves, which we documented, but kind of stayed with the temples, because that's another thing where, like, one thing is to start speaking about the temples and the Yazidi genocide, but to have, let's say 3D models of mass graves circulating in exhibition halls. That's
No, I mean that's
not do that. So,
yeah, that's for sure. So I mean that was always a question in the exhibition as well. So what do you show, or what does it mean? Because of course it has also a part. It looks nice, but it has a very serious meaning. I mean that is anyway different in an art connection, because you always have to have a balance between the form and the content, and that's why you added the very large collection of papers from the UN about this. So then, if you really could go behind, and people actually were very interested in the exhibition to really read about it, read about the whole situation. Some were pitying that it was not in German, so but it was really, there are books of this kind of UN texts, and so that's why it's always different situation in an exhibition. But what I'm happy that you can make people sensitive to approach this theme in a way. So of course not like a scientist, or not like a politician, but you can make people sensitive to think about, to come closer. And we had a very, very great reaction to that. So like every exhibition, it's the best to see it on spot. What is not possible only for educational reason in this month, we know, because of the pandemic situation. But we have a lot of materials online, and I know on your website there's a lot of material information about all these other projects that are really, really exciting, and would be a good reason to look after it. And you have very good documentation on it, videos, text, and so on. Because we have to come to the end, like always, it goes too quickly. So, but that's the format of this kind of live interview. That's why, so I would like to give you both the last chance to talk about that, what maybe we missed until now, or what is very important. I know also that Alexis, we spoke a lot about the exhibition, about setup the exhibition, about the forms, about when Alexis was dealing with the 3D print, and also what is behind, because so it is a technology what is very makes nice surfaces, but it gives the possibility really to dig into things, and that is what I think also Alexis was very excited about.
I really have one more question that comes up when listening to you, what you were talking about. You were really, I noted it on my paper, often using terms like investigation, knowledge, research, and these terms of scientific research. So what have you found out finally? Is there something that you know now after your research about the Yazidi culture and about the destruction of these temples, what you have not known before?
I mean, I think that as I said before, in the beginning, the biggest thing that we know, and obviously, I mean, the biggest thing that came out of this project was the methodology and the process of documentation that did not exist before in this way, in this place. I mean, that's really what came. If there's something that's left from the project, I mean, this is it. It's not. I mean, there's obviously. I mean, there's a lot more to know about. I mean, a lot more testimonies, a lot more documentation. There's in Sinjar specifically. I mean, the documentation team and I mean, they've documented, and you can see that also in the exhibition, as well as some of the reports that they produced for the mass graves around the issue of the mass graves. So I mean, a lot of things are continuously being kind of discovered and still are being discovered. I think what's the second. So the first thing is the methodology. The second thing is the putting these individual cases and visualizing the network. So what you can see in the bigger map that's in the exhibition, this kind of the tracking of different how ISIS organized the system of genocide on the one hand, killing through killing, but through destruction of the infrastructure, the villages, the religious infrastructure, and the taking of dispersal of people. So the kidnapping of women, children, and how they're being kind of sold off in two different areas of northern Iraq and into Syria. So that was something that kind of became much more visual through this part of the project. And obviously since there's been much more research as well. So I mean, those are two aspects I think that have really come into prominence. The last thing, very shortly, is that some of this knowledge of the scanning has not yet been used in this way, but there's kind of possibility of it being used in part of the reconstruction processes that are now starting to happen in south of Sinjar. So, which is already another kind of a new phase of where this information might be is possibly might become useful now.
Yeah, I think this methodical approach and also this way of visualization, it's also a very big impact on the artistic side. So I think that makes also the connection between these two fields, because this shows Alexis thought, so I have of him because he has his last words he used for a question. So he thought that sorry, now I forgot it, but yeah, so that yeah, so we have to come to the end. Maybe it gets to your mind, Alexis, but
yeah, I think we have to continue the exhibition for one more month and make a third artist talk, maybe.
Oh yeah, or we can make a big meeting once.
There would be so much more to ask and talk.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, so then, unfortunately, but we have to end. But was very happy that we have this kind of dialogue now between you, and yeah, you're welcome all the time, and we are open for another talks about anything, because I think your work is so amazing and so really a big and wide perspective on different spots we never spoke about yet. But so it is also interesting from seen from the art perspective, even if we know we never can cover everything. So that's why you have this part when you go for the trial, you support activists and so on. This is one part, and then the other part is really with the power of art, get people closer to some really important themes and to make them sensitive about this. So yeah, so there's always a lot to talk, and I'm happy that we were together again. And I would like to thank Julian Kistler as well, at the Technic, who makes this possible all the time. And yeah, so have a look at, for instance, architecture online, Schafhof online, and then, of course, if it's possible, come to see us and visit our exhibition place. And yeah, let's meet. That's always still the most important.
No, thank you. Yeah, again, for putting on this. I mean, I haven't seen the exhibition myself yet, so I need to come over. But it looks really beautifully.
We will have
to speak.
Soon we will have 360 degrees photographs from the exhibition, so you can walk into your own exhibition. I think some days later, Julian is working on that. So as much as we can provide across digital media without really 3D processing, so you can enjoy the exhibition.
Thank you, and thank you, Alexis, for handling the talk.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, visitors. Bye.